Hey guys, this is the Completionist, and welcome back for part 2 on how to complete Odin Sphere. Part 2 will mainly consist of 3 things: the final set of boss fights in the game, how to obtain the different scenes for each boss fight in order to fill out the story archive for Armageddon, and how to get the good ending and the bad ending of the game. I'll also throw in some general tips when playing this game for the first time. So as you can see, I'm getting ready to go into the Armageddon book, so let's get going on finishing up Odin Sphere. So guys, here is the first boss fight of the Armageddon book, known as the Darkova. In order to get the good ending of the game, the character you have to use to fight against the Darkova is Cornelius the Puka Prince. With this boss fight, you can unlock a different opening and ending scene in the story archive if you fight the Darkova with Mercedes and Velvet. On the other hand, if you fight this boss with Gwendolyn the Valkyrie or Oswald the Black Knight, you will get a generic opening scene and ending scene to this boss fight. As with any of the boss fights, especially in the Armageddon book, it is definitely helpful to have a good supply of items. Some of the items that can definitely help you with some of the boss fights in the Armageddon book are painkillers, which minimize the amount of damage you take, unlimited POWs, which allow you to keep your POW meter at full for a short period of time, and elixirs, which regain a large portion of your health. It is also helpful to keep a good supply of antidotes, since the Darkova loves to use a poison attack. Here is the second boss fight of the Armageddon book, known as the King of the Netherworld. The correct character to use for this boss fight to get the good ending is Oswald the Black Knight. You can, however, get a different opening and ending scene if you use Cornelius the Puka Prince. Using any of the other characters except these two will give you a generic opening and ending scene. With this boss fight, you just need to be patient. You have to defeat his 3 heads to get him to open his heart. Once he does, go into shadow form to try to do as much damage as possible. You will have to defeat his 3 heads about 2 to 4 times to do enough damage to his heart to eventually kill this boss. Here is the third boss fight of the Armageddon book, known as Onks the Fire King. The correct character to use for this boss fight to get the good ending is Mercedes the Fairy Princess. In order to fill out the story archive, you will get different opening and ending sequences if you use Gwendolyn the Valkyrie or Oswald the Black Knight to fight this boss. Using Cornelius or Velvet will give you a generic opening and ending sequence to this boss fight. This boss fight can get pretty annoying pretty fast, since you'll always be taking fire damage. But one thing you can do to make this boss fight much easier is, before you fight the bosses of the Armageddon, make sure Mercedes has an item called Ooze in her inventory. Using this item, as you see me using right now, will make this boss fight much easier. Here is the fourth boss fight of the Armageddon book, known as the Cauldron. The correct character to use for this boss fight in order to get the good ending is Velvet. You don't get any extra scenes if you use any of the other characters to fight this boss. Every character except for Velvet will have a generic opening and ending to this boss fight. From my personal opinion, I find this the most difficult boss fight out of the 5 bosses you fight in the Armageddon book because of how easy it is to take damage from this boss. You will have to be wary of your HP at all times, since you can lose a lot of HP very quickly when fighting this boss. Stock up on elixirs and you should be fine. Finally, here is the 5th boss of the Armageddon book, known as the Last Dragon. The correct character to use for this boss fight is Gwendolyn the Valkyrie. This boss is pretty much the same as Velvet when it comes to the story archive. You don't get any extra scenes if you use any of the other characters. Every character except for Gwendolyn will have a generic opening and ending to this boss fight. For a final boss, the Last Dragon is actually incredibly easy. You have to climb to the top of his serpent body to attack the crown on his head. When you get to the top, don't be afraid to go all out when you attack him. There will be occasions in which, on your journey to the top of the dragon, or when you're knocked back down to the bottom by the dragon, that you have to fight his head. Just watch out for his dragon breath and when he tries to bite you.
If my
So guys, that pretty much sums up the boss fights during the Armageddon book. If you ended up using a different order of characters to fight the bosses, as you just see me do, you'll be treated to the bad ending. You'll see this ending a few times, especially if you want to fill out the story archive. However, if you do the Armageddon book correctly, you'll be treated to the good ending, which is obviously more happier. And if you watch to the end of the credits for the good ending, you'll be treated to a special scene in which a merchant from the city of Titania will talk to you, the player. This is yet another scene you need to see in order to fill out the story archive. Once you have finally collected all scenes of the story archive, beat the game one last time to get the good ending. You'll be treated to the last scene of the story archive in which Cornelius the Puka Prince and Velvet, who was turned into a Puka by reactivating the Cauldron, get reverted to their human forms. As you're watching this scene, I just wanted to highlight a few important points when playing this game for the first time. Be patient. You're going to get killed very fast, very easy, especially with some of the boss fights if you try to rush them. Take your time and plan your strategy with care. One of the things you'll realize with this game is that item management can be very tedious. One of the first items you should buy are bags so that you can hold more items. It will work in your favor as you progress further in the game. In terms of completing this game, one of the things you have working in your favor is that it is impossible to miss anything. Once you have finished all 5 books for the first time, you can go back and play them at any time on the one save file if you need to obtain more items, more recipes, or anything else you had to do in this game. When you complete this game, do you get anything? Well, if you collect every text, every recipe, and every alchemy mixture, you get a chance to play the game on heroic mode, which is a difficulty setting in which your HP never increases. But you don't get anything extra in completing the game on heroic mode. So there we are, guys. We have now successfully fully completed Odin Sphere. It's not a terribly difficult game to fully beat, but it can take a little bit of time, and there is a little bit of grinding involved. But thankfully we only have 2 endings to deal with, and that's pretty much it. Some slight item collection, but nothing that substantial. It was finally rewarding to finally get the true ending, and especially to see the Puka curse taken off Cornelius and Velvet. So, Odin Sphere in itself is a great game. It is very accessible. If for any apparent reason, if you can't find the black label, it did get released as a greatest hits in 2008. And if for any apparent reason, if you like those types of games, we have one that got released on the Wii, done by pretty much the same team, is Muramasa the Demon Blade. Now, I actually haven't played this myself, but I actually look forward to it. According to what a lot of people said, this game is pretty much just as beautiful as what Odin Sphere is. So guys, anyway, thanks for watching, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.